Last night at a school board meeting in Baltimore, Maryland, a man whose name does not do the size of his character justice, Robert Small, became larger than life. He showcased the true, sad nature of where we are as a society, and how lost so many of us have truly become, and how our fear has cowed us and made us submit even when we know what we are watching is blatantly wrong. At this school board meeting, Common Core was the course of discussion. The meeting was scripted. Parents could write in questions on note cards before the event, and the administrators picked and chose the ones they wanted to answer, as to control the flow of information on this obviously what we all know to be a horrid program, numbing down the minds of our children. But he stands up and bucks this staged event, and begins to ask questions over them on their microphone. And the people want to hear it. They say, let him speak. But more sinister plans are afoot. An off-duty Baltimore PD police officer goes to that man in his seat and forcibly removes him from the theater, pushing and jarring him out the door, bit by bit. And the whole time he's telling his fellow citizens, question these people. Do not just accept what they say. Verify truth for yourself and find out what's fact and what is lie. And for doing this, he was arrested and now faces up to possibly 6 months in jail. I would like to think that that won't happen because somebody will realize how wrong this is. But the scariest part and what makes this so appalling to me, above and beyond any other violation of the First Amendment that there's plenty of YouTube videos out there on, is that this whole room of parents, there's only one cop, but this whole room of parents, they gasp as he's pushed through the door finally outside. They knew it was wrong. Their gasp shows their surprise and shock at what is happening. But not one of them stood. Not one of them had the courage or moral fortitude to stand up and say, release him, let go of that man. I will tell you, if I was there before that man smiled again, that badged thug smiled again, he would need a clear choice dental consultant and a full-on appointment before he wanted to show his face again with a smile. Because I will not stand for that. We should not stand for that. Robert Small, a man who looks like he's never been in a fight in his life, but knows what's right and wrong, stood up in the face of tyranny and took the short end of the stick willingly because he would not be silent because his children's future was on the line, and that was important enough to him to walk away in cuffs. But the First Amendment wasn't important enough to anybody in that room to stand up against a badged thug and say, no, this will not happen. This is America, and you are a tyrant. We have given more consideration to the consequences instead of our principle. A dangerous thing. Because when you fear the consequences so much that they override your principles and your sense of right, well, a crippling fear sets in. It only grows worse with the complacency that is always present in a person who exhibits those traits. This not only is an affront to our Constitution, and this officer should be fired, but more importantly, it is a wake-up call to every American citizen that you are blind. These men with badges are not on your side. They violate the law every day. Because it is written word, they enforce it. Whether it is right, whether it is wrong. Because by enforcing it, by collecting fines for these victimless crimes they cite people for, that they incarcerate people for, it pays their mortgage. They have put in the dollar above their principles. Do not put consequence above yours. For it will only be a matter of time till something comes up that is important enough to you, where you stand up and say something, but everybody else, still fearful, sits there and watches as you are dragged away. Eventually, if nobody does a thing, they will come for us all at some point in time or another. And if it continues like this, most of us will comply and beg, uncle, give in to them. For if we sit there silent in the face of tyrants, we'll be like that preacher said in Nazi Germany. At first they came for them, but I was not one. I said nothing. When they came for them, but I wasn't one of them, so I said nothing. And finally, when they came for me, no one was left to speak for me. Everybody all cried, uncle. Been locked up. If you cannot see the pressing importance of this issue, if you are so blind as to not have this register a 10.0 on your internal Richter scale, you need to remove the thumb from your ass and check your pulse. Our founding fathers fought a revolution over less than this. In the history of this world, men who have been dragged off like that have not always just been put in jail. At times they've been put in gulags and gas chambers and shot in the head on the side of some fucking road for bucking the powers that be. We need to do this now. We need to tell these people no. Because they have no power without our money. They can't pay their enforcers. They can't fund the entitlement state. If you all stop giving the beast money, this all ends. But you're cowards. Because you fear what will happen. But what will happen if you don't do it? What will happen if you let this continue? The end result is far worse than not paying your taxes, I assure you that. And it is a result that you will, through your allowing it to come to pass, will go to your grave knowing that it will be visited upon your children if you let tyranny come to being. So pick the consequences you want. Because if the consequences of not funding this government, this beast that thrives on money and needs it to survive, if those consequences of pulling that away and retracting that are more important to you than the consequences of losing freedom, you are not my countrymen, and I am ashamed to have ever called you one. I speak clearly now to you because this is where we stand. If you fund the government that does things like this, that targets people with its IRS, that lies when people die overseas and it does nothing, and funnels rockets and arms to our enemies, if you will fund that government, you give it the ability to govern you whether or not you consent. Your consent becomes irrelevant because you have funded its enforcement and its tyranny. How much farther are you willing to let this go? Is this not enough? Is that man, as he's pushed out the door in that last second of the video that I hope we've all seen of Robert Small, a true, courageous patriot, rebel, and now outlaw, who stood up against this one thing and found that sometimes the powers don't like that. And how dare you? If this is not enough, nothing ever will be for you. You will be the kind of person that when they come for the guns, you'll have done nothing. And when they finally come to your door, they're gonna pry it from your cold, dead hands. Because believe me, when they choose to come to your door, they will be ready. Because they chose to be there. If we do not take the jump start on these people and take the initiative and stop this before it goes too far, it will be too late. It took 2,000 years of philosophy and great men postulating the idea of freedom for this country to come to be. And then it was a 1 in 3 shot because 2/3 of the country didn't even support it. A third didn't care and a third were for the British. But men that knew that what was right fought against those odds to bring something that had been kindling for 2,000 years to be. And will you now let it die in your cowardice? I give the government no money. I will not pay for a license because I have a right to travel. I will not pay a duty or a fee to use and own my property that I exercise that right to travel with. I give them only the money I have to through the gas tax, and only because I do have a life and I have a business to run and I have to get there. I do not pay a tax with my business. I do not have any of my employees pay taxes. I wouldn't let them anyway. I give them their money. If they choose to do it after that, they can be fools if they want. But I will not facilitate it. I will not enroll in Obamacare. I'm a young man. I don't have health care right now. It's a decision and a risk I take, knowingly and willingly. Do not try to protect me from myself. I have taken those stands, made those choices, and I encourage all to do the same. I tell you all, go buy your 80% lower AR-15s. Even if you have a felony record, if you're a true good patriot, go buy it anyway. Get it machined out. Buy a lathe. Have a friend pitch in on it. Make yourself an assault rifle. Guns are the weapons of freedom, not the tools of criminals. Freedom holds that AR-15. For it is what our military holds. And just as in the spirit of the Second Amendment, when it was written, the Army had muskets and so did every citizen. Today we should all have what the military has. That way we are all equal. Because that is what we were based on. Equality. But last night, Robert Small's voice was not equal to those of the people that wished to silence him. Their right to lie to people was more important than his right to speak truth. In the media, I see mainly crickets. From the pundits, I hear things about Obama has a personality defect on my Twitter feed, and I don't see every single person lighting up with Robert Small's name. I hate that his name is Small, because the man, in 2 minutes and 58 seconds of YouTube footage, showed us what it means to be free. It means to stand there even when the hand is coming down to crush you, and you say, no. Much like John Galt in Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand said, no, I will not fund the leeches. No, I will not continue on with this, and I will stop it now because I have the power to do it. And he said that one word to himself. No. Say it right now to yourself. Say no, this will not continue. Say no. Stand for something. Stand for something that you can believe in with your whole being and not regret it for 1 second every day of the rest of your life. Because that coward inside every man that the brave fight back and the weak submit to, that you will regret for all your days, from this to your last. What do you choose to live with? How will you be remembered? If I die today under the boot, I would like to think at least somebody would say, no man would rule him, and he knew it was right. My challenge to America is, do you know what is right? Do you?